Where is the course rep? Where is Karim? Okay, Karim is here. Where is Peters is here. Cynthia is not here. The other course rep, Eze, is not here. Who again? We just have 15. Now for those who are actually here, Access Bank offers some kind of, maybe there'll be job openings. And I think it was in our last meeting this week, they said something about the graduate programs. It's also a form of employment too. So for those who actually go on to do backend very well, they get that job. Maybe not from Access Bank, maybe anywhere, but the goal is to make sure that you can actually build the back end yourself, pending from when the opportunity will come. I had to take on a little task before your class now for a friend who is actually in Canada, because he went there and now he's applying for jobs, but he needed hands-on. So I had to push through some stuff. Getting the opportunity, sometimes some people say it's difficult getting the opportunity, but I don't think getting the opportunity is difficult. It's actually doing the job that is difficult. Because I don't see anybody going to ask you for certificates or ask you for anything. They want to see practical, as in they want to see what you have done real time and know that you can handle this thing real time. That's the only criteria I know these days they ask you before giving you a job. So if nobody's asking you for certificate or asking you to present anything, they just want you to actually do the job and know how to do it very well. Getting the job is very easy. Some people say they will give it to their friends or friends, neighbors of neighbor people. Even if they are giving it to friends or friends, at the end of the day, the company manager, the person they are giving it to, would actually want the job to be done. There is no way you want to build a company like Paper or OP or something like that, Money Point, and then the person they gave the contract to decide to hire their brothers. Now, if they hire their brothers will still look for somebody that will still do the job. They need somebody to still do the job. So even if they hire the brothers, they have people that they know, they still need somebody to actually sit down, write the code, and develop the project. So your main best bet would be to actually be in class, understand everything, and make sure you can build it yourself. So that being said, we can proceed. Now, the idea of Node.js is this. Now, a lot of persons before now, they use something like PHP. Wisdom, I have worked with a lot of organizations, both in Nigeria and outside. The only thing they've asked me for is maybe give us a portfolio. In their portfolio, you just write things about yourself. Others will ask you for your LinkedIn profile. Some persons will ask you, okay, send me a link to recent projects. Nobody has ever asked bring certificates. And as a matter of fact, I keep telling you, I didn't even learn it under any organization that would say, okay, I have certificate based on. No, mine was practical, as in real time. So and that has actually affected not just my certificate, every other certificate I have from University of Port Harcourt. I don't even know where it is because I gave it to my dad and has been with him since then. So I have never seen a job they will ask you bring a certificate before you'll be given a software development job. I have never seen. Now they will ask you for CV, they ask you for what is it, portfolio, they ask you for LinkedIn. What it is, what you put there that matters, but what they are actually looking for is your experience. That is what they are looking for, experience. I've had a job where I was being interviewed by somebody from Microsoft, and at some point I get offended, I got pissed off, and I told them the task, the assignment is actually too much, and if I'm supposed to be doing this, I deserve to be paid for it. The next morning, HR called me and said, how much are we going to pay you? Now, it is an interview, but they will pay me for the interview. And I didn't show them any certificate or anything whatsoever. I'm counting my own experience, I've had so many of them. But I'm not saying we're not going to give you certificate for these programs. You will. But the most important thing is being able to build it from start to finish. And I'm saying this for those who have actually started with us. We just have 1 month to go. Please, whatever it is you need to put in for the 1 month and for the period of time where you will build your own project, please put it in, and I'm sure you'll be able to build your own backend project completely. When it comes to Bisola, for the opportunity for Access Bank, I don't know the requirement, but when it comes to software development, they're not only looking at whether you're a graduate or not. I have friends who are not from Nigeria, they are from Vietnam, India, and other countries. They don't even know how to speak English. They are not even graduates. They just sat down, learned programming, and they started coding programming. So it's not about graduates or no graduates, but being able to communicate with other developers is the key factor. I like that. Yeah, I nobody have actually asked me for my university certificates before, whether photocopy, whether online. Nobody has asked for that before. Okay, so like I was saying, now the idea of building a backend with Node.js is this. Before now, a lot of persons use PHP to build projects. When you build your front end with JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, they come back to build the backend with something like PHP. And PHP, a lot of websites now were built with PHP. A lot of websites were built with PHP, and that's why people say PHP is the mother of websites. And stuff like Facebook, when it came out, Facebook was built upon PHP like that. So, but with time, they discovered that PHP is not that fast. And a lot of our government websites are built with PHP. That is why when you want to, for example, NYSC, this thing, at that time, when you want to run NYSC registration, you hear people say things like, we want to start in the night. We want to run it in the night because in the night there will be less traffic, stuff like that. So a lot of websites being run on PHP was because PHP was like the foremost programming language used for building projects and the backend. But with time, people then discover that JavaScript that we use on the front end, we can actually use the same JavaScript on the back end. So while you write the JavaScript on the front end, you can still write that JavaScript on the back end. The reason being, JavaScript is very fast and it can handle a lot of traffic without anybody knowing it. For example, Netflix, Facebook. Now, I'm not saying all of the part of it. Now, some part of it was built with JavaScript, so it can actually carry a lot of persons at the same time, and you don't notice that issue of the site is hanging. Now, if it's hanging, it's definitely your network. It has nothing to do with the software itself. So if we want to use JavaScript on the back end, and JavaScript is actually a front-end programming language, it can run on its own on the front end, but on the back end, it cannot run on its own. So it needs a little help to run. And that is why the idea of Node was invented. Node was actually invented to run JavaScript, and that is why it is called the JavaScript runtime environment. Because you write your JavaScript code, the same JavaScript you write on the front end, you write it on the back end, and then you use Node to run it. And that is why it is called Node.js. So it is still JavaScript. It's no new programming language. It is still JavaScript. All you are doing is you are using Node to run it. So which is why we had to spend time to do JavaScript from the front end and added HTML and CSS to it. But the idea is to actually understand the basic JavaScript, because on the back end, which is Node.js, we are still writing JavaScript. The only difference now is it will not run on its own. We need Node to run it. I think that's clear. So when you download Node.js and all of that, you can start coding JavaScript project. How do we start JavaScript? What's the idea of communicating with backend and so on? Now, there are so many things to learn, so many, but my intention is not to bore you with so many things. My intention is to go straight to the main things that companies will be asking for, things you need to know to be able to build your own project, full-time project, and build it very well. So along the way, we may pick up some things on your own, you pick up other things, but this class is strictly to build you as a backend developer. You may not get to know everything, but you will know everything about how to build your own backend. And if you see any company backend, you understand what is going on, how they're building it. If you hear about any errors, you understand what is actually going on and how to solve that kind of error. So we've made a lot of requests to our backends. Let me actually start with one. Not here. Let me go. Yeah, I am recording. I am. I just hope I won't miss it any day. Back end intro. All right. Now, the idea of backend is this. There are two different types of backend developers. No. Yep. Yeah. There are two types of backend developers. Before now, there are developers that build backend and use it to render HTML pages, like the way PHP does, and so on. And you can do that with Node.js, and it goes on. But recently, backend development has changed. So you are building your backend to handle functionalities, to handle arithmetics, to handle all the things behind the scene, and then you are sending back response. So that is what backend now is all about. You are no longer rendering HTML pages for users to see. Rather, the front end will send you data or send you any information. You take that information, you do something with it, and then send back a response. Now, you can either be sending back data as a string, or sending back data as an array, or sending back data as an object or array of objects. But the most important thing is that you are accepting data, you do something with the data, and you send back a response. Now, that is the idea of the backend we are going to be working on. But it doesn't mean that people still don't do the idea of using Node backend to render HTML pages. No, they still do it, but these days, what you definitely see is that most companies have front-end developers and have back-end developers. Now, if a company has front-end developer and back-end developer, it just means that the back-end developer's duty is just to be serving JSON data. You'll be serving JSON data. And what would be your job as a backend developer? You are going to build so many APIs and attach these APIs to endpoints. You build so many APIs and attach this API. Now, sometimes the API can be as much as 20, 50, 100, 200, 300, and sometimes it doesn't end. You keep building APIs every time, so long as you are working for that company. Yes, it is possible to know backend without knowing front end at all. But it is not possible to know Node.js without knowing JavaScript. Now, JavaScript is actually on the front end, but you still use JavaScript for back end. So I wanted to be very clear. It's possible to know back end without knowing front end, but it is not possible to know Node.js without knowing JavaScript. All right, so your job as a backend developer is to build the whole backend, build so many APIs, attach them to endpoints, and deploy them to a server online. Now, a secured server online. Now, this your secured server, front-end developers will be able to make requests to it. Now, it depends on how you build that API. Now, you can have APIs that are built with C# and deployed, and then backend is actually, will I say, integrating that API into JavaScript. Yes, you can do that, but you can't actually write C# language inside JavaScript language, though. So you build an endpoint or API with C#, deploy it. Now, whatever it is doing, you can also integrate that API into a JavaScript backend. That is very, very possible. For example, that's very possible. Peters, which part should I recap? Don't say all of the things. Now, don't say from the beginning. I haven't actually done much, but we don't want to be recapping everything. So, Peters, I want to find out, recap which side. So, like I said, C#. Okay. Now, C# is also a programming language. It's a different programming language. JavaScript is a different programming language. Now, you can build an API with C#, deploy it, and it's running live. And then the functionality of that API built with C#, a JavaScript backend can integrate that functionality into a JavaScript API. Now, what will a backend do? I just explained to you that a backend will just accept data, do something with the data, and send you back a response. For example, you can say you build a payment gateway with C#, and then you build a wallet system or e-commerce something, anyone with JavaScript. Now, you know that before you fund the user's wallet, the user needs to make payment. And because the API that handles payment was built with C#, you can actually integrate that payment, calling that API into your JavaScript. What you are doing is you are going to just send the data. Of course, you send it the user email, the amount the user is paying, the credit card information of the user. Now, that a C# API will be responsible for taking that information, run some logic, which will be to deduct from the user's wallet and then credit your own wallet account, and then send back a response. Now, it will send them back a response to your own JavaScript API. Now, your JavaScript API will be expecting a response from that API, something like successful or a status code, something that will tell you that the transaction was successful. So the moment that your own JavaScript API receives that signal or information, then they will carry out their own functionality, maybe to fund the user's wallet or give them access to Netflix or just do something that was paid for. So that's the idea of having two APIs built with different programming languages. They can work together, but they will not be in the same file. So you can't write a C# language or code inside a JavaScript file. So they will not run in the same file, but they can run independently while working together. When it comes to hosting backend, there are servers that you can host your backend to, which you can also use for hosting a front-end website. But backend mostly needs to have a dedicated VPS, virtual dedicated for just the backend. It can be AWS, it can be Heroku. I like using Heroku. I also like using DigitalOcean, AWS, anyone, depending on the one your client can afford. a lot of them are very, very expensive. They can go from as low as $5 to $25 per month, or even more, depending on the size of client base you want to serve. So, but there's some like I've seen people deploy backend to Namecheap. You can do that, and Namecheap is actually cheap. That just like the name, Namecheap is actually cheap. Which other I have seen deploy backend to other places. So, but most times a backend is deployed to a dedicated server or cloud storage online, because the backend is the brain, is the heart of most softwares. If you want to hack a website or hack anything software, they are not attacking the front end, they are attacking the back end. And that is why backend developers are not joked with. You don't joke with your backend developers, especially if that backend developer was there from the beginning of the project. Now, if it's somebody that joined the project halfway and you still have other persons who started from the beginning, then that's different case. But developers that started with the project from the beginning have every role to play to make sure that your server is secured and will not be hacked. And there are so many ways to hack a server. The easiest way to hack a server is to send so many requests to that server, something that was done in 2020 to most of all these Nigerian websites, and it's still done to banks. So we are going to learn how to do that and how to solve that issue too. They create bots that will make so many requests. That kind of request that will made to JSON placeholder API. So hackers will create bots that will make so many GET requests, for example, to your server, that your server will not be able to handle all the requests at the same time. Your server will shut down. Now, there could be other ways to take off from there if they allow your server to reboot again. But if you don't want your server to reboot again, your server will just shut down perpetually. Now, without doing that, your server is down. So that's one way to hack a server, take it down, do whatever they want to do with it. And most of these servers that this can happen to are servers that are not built well. Maybe they are running on a programming language that can handle multiple requests or thousands of requests, or maybe the backend developers didn't take some precautionary measure. There are a lot of things you can do as a backend developer. So when it comes to software, the backend is real business, very real business. And most times, users can actually perform tasks or do things that can crash your back end without them knowing. Now, a lot of us do it. We just go to a website, you click a button, you click it twice, it's not loading, you just click it back and forth. Just before lack of patience, you just click so many things, and you can even submit an empty form. Now, all of those things are creating or generating requests and doing stuff. So this can actually, if the backend developer isn't handling all of these things on the backend, it can actually cause the server to shut down like that. So the backend is no joke with. Now, to communicate with the backend, after you deploy your server, you're going to build your server with a particular port number. Now, that port number will be the special opening, or should I say like a port. You know, a port is like every laptop. A lot of laptops has port where you can connect a USB to it and you can transfer file between the USB and the computer. So that is what a port number is. That port number is like a unique port, a special port for your own backend that any front end or any application can communicate with your backend. Now, if they call any other port number, it will not be talking directly to your backend. I know we've seen a lot of these movies where you see a very big black computer stacked upon each other and they're blinking blue lights like that. Now, that is actually a server dedicated to host backends. Now, that server it has so many port numbers and it has a lot of IP addresses. Now, each of these IP addresses is attached to a port number, and each one serves a particular backend. If you build your backend and the user is supposed to communicate with your backend, they will be making that communication via that port number you open to communicate with your own backend. And now, because IP addresses and numbers can be too difficult to remember, Stanley, we are going to talk about that as we are building it. I'll make sure to tell you some errors you could make that could actually cause your backend to be attacked or whatever it is. We talked about that while we're doing it. So I was saying now, because IP addresses are actually difficult to remember, now these addresses, IP addresses, are then attached to letters and text, which we call domain name. So domain name is more like a coverage for the IP address. If you are calling a domain name, you are actually calling the IP address that is attached to that domain. So that is the idea of IP addresses. So you need to make HTTP requests, that's hypertext transfer protocol request, and to a particular IP address or maybe to a particular domain name, is forwards and add the endpoint before an API will respond to you. That is just like a holistic view. Now you build your backend. As a backend developer, you build your backend in stages. The first stage is to set up a server. A server is a part of the backend that runs 24/7, 247, like every day, every time, every minute. It does not sleep. It is running every single day. That is the part of the backend, the server that is running 247. For example, if you build something like PiggyVest that users are going to credit their wallet or maybe fund their account, and then the platform is supposed to calculate interest for them based on the number of days. Now, you should know that for that to work very well, your server should not shut down any day, even for 1 minute, because for any minute your server shuts down, users have lost that minute. If it's going to calculate their interest weekly basis, if it shuts down for 1 minute, it has lost 1 minute. If it shuts down for 1 day, it has lost 1 day. Now that server cannot calculate interest correctly and add it. So that should tell you that for backend, you don't joke with it. A lot of students we are complaining. I don't know whether it's from our class, but during the meeting we heard that a lot of students complain about the assignment. We're not marking it very well. We're not showing them the scores and stuff like that. But I want to say this now. The last what is it called? This one that they created the flyer and then they showed student names of students. For backend, we had 4 students on the same score. 4 students on the same score, and 1 person was picked because they can't pick the 4. 1 person was picked. I want to apologize for that. It wasn't me, but I brought that to their attention. And they say maybe because I'm dashing scores. I'm not dashing you scores. For backend, there is nothing like, I have to explain to them, there is nothing like 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, or 5/10. No, your target should be 8/10 or 10/10. Otherwise, you failed it, because for the backend, you're not joking with it. Now, if there's any error with your assignment, any mistake you make, I will write your name and I will attach that error or whatever it is I discover with the assignment to your name. Now you know that, see mistakes you made with your assignment. Now, if you don't make any mistake, I will not attach anything to your name. Then you know that you got your full mark, 10/10 or 8/10, like that. And what else was I gonna say? What is it called? Multi-choice questions, which is objective A and B, A and B, like that. I may not write out the names again, publish the names again with scores, because the platform does that automatically. You submit, you would see your answer on your score. I want to believe that's the case, but if you have not been seeing it, let me know. I will make sure that I put that setting very well. You see your score. The only time I publish your names is if it has to do with your code. I read your code and I need to confirm that what you're actually writing and submitting via GitHub is correct. I will read it, I'll look at it and make sure it's correct, and then I will respond by posting your name. Okay, this person, you did well, you did well, you did well. This other person, see the mistake I found, and so on and so forth, like that. So I wanted to explain that assignment part, but I want to believe it's not from here. If it's from here, it should come to be all right. All right, thank you, Wisdom. So I was talking about backend. Now we are going to start the backend. The first thing you want to do is install Node. When you install Node, Node is going to come with something called npm. Automatically, it will come with this npm. Now, npm is responsible for managing or controlling or installing or uninstalling packages that you can use for your backend. So, and that's why it's called npm, Node Package Manager. That's what it's called, npm, Node Package Manager. It manages all the packages that can work with Node. So there are so many packages that you can work with. Now, it is very, very important that you install Node and you'll be very sure that you have Node, and then be also sure you have npm. But the moment you install Node, you have npm automatically. Now, this is where you are going to see a lot of packages we are going to be using here at this npm. All right, that being said, let's go. Before you start a backend project, you need to initialize npm in the project. Now, sorry, I'm talking too much. Like I said, I need to go straight to what you need to know to build backend. I'm trying to establish the basics, things that you learn before you start coding. After now, I may not be saying too much again. We'll just be writing codes and codes. So before you start any backend project, you need to initialize npm with it. Now, why? npm is a Node Package Manager. It is responsible for handling your backend project. It will know all the information about that backend, the name of the project, what you are building it, the year you built it, who is building it, and so on and so forth. Every information about the backend, npm is supposed to be aware. And that is why before you start, you initialize npm in the project. For example, I would start with, let me use this integrated terminal, this one that is built in here. I think I will use, do I have git bash? Okay, I think, yeah, I use git bash there. Okay, clear. All right. So to initialize npm, all you need to do is say npm init, the way we do git. npm init. You know what? I think I should use external. Let me use external. You can use any terminal you want, but just make sure that that terminal is opened on the folder. The folder I am working with is called BE intro, which is this one here. So I can open up a terminal here on this same folder. That is the same thing. It's the same thing. You can either choose to use this terminal here or you use this terminal here. Let me make this bigger. Okay. Please, if you have any questions, use the question and answer topic. That is the only one I will know. That's the only time I will know you have a question. All right, please use this one. So I have my terminal open and I have my VS Code open. Now the two of them are opened on the same folder. Now that's the most important thing. Make sure that the two of them are opened on the same folder. If you see here, this is BE intro and this is also BE intro, the same folder. It is very, very important that they be opened on the same folder. Now, the first thing you want to do is to initialize npm init. And npm init will only work when you have installed Node. So if you haven't installed Node, this will not work because npm comes with Node. But if you have installed Node, fine, this will work. Now, we want to initialize npm, meaning we want npm to keep track of this backend project. We want npm to know everything about this backend project. So when I initialize npm, I hit enter. It will tell me a lot of things. It says this only covers the common items and tries guess sensible default. See this npm install package, blah 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 blah. Too many questions, but the most important thing here, it says this utility will walk you through creating a package.json file, which is the most important file for your backend, the package.json file. And I will explain. The first thing it's asking you is the package name, which is like your project name. What do you want this project to be called? Yes, Nathan, there is, I will not say a one-time initialization. No, for every new backend project you want to build, you initialize npm every single time. For example, you want to build a school website that will have a backend. You're building the backend, you initialize npm, but you do it once for every project. Now, I don't know if that serves as a one-time initialization. If you want to build an e-commerce project that will have a backend, you also initialize npm, but you only do it once. If you want to build NYC website or software, anyone that will require a backend, you also initialize npm, but you do it once. You don't need internet, Joshua. You don't need the internet to run, what is it called? The terminal. No, you don't. But if you want to install packages, which we are going to do, then you need internet. You will need internet. I am using Git Bash, and the other one, you can use any terminal, but I'm using Git Bash integrated into the Mac terminal. Now, there is no way to do it twice, wisdom. If you initialize npm twice, that backend project is finished. You need to start that project from the beginning. So it's done only once. And I will explain to you why. You also see it too. So I'm trying to initialize npm, and it says this utility will walk you through creating a package.json file. And I said a package.json file is the most important file whenever you are working on the back end. So if you create a package.json file the first time and you initialize npm again the second time, there's a clash. There's going to be a clash, and it means that backend project, you need to start from the beginning, except you are the one that, except you know exactly what you are doing, you can figure out which of the package.json file you want to delete. Don't worry, I'm going to show you. So the first thing is asking me here is the package name. The package name is like the project name. So I can write school website if that is the name of the project. I can write access bank if that is the name of the project. Whatever is the name of your project, you write it here. That's the first thing to ask you. But if you are okay with this name here, B intro, which is like default name because of the folder, you just hit enter. So that's what I will do. I will hit enter to pick up that name. The second thing is asking is the version of this project. Now, because this is the first time we're building this project, the version is actually version 1. So I'm going to stick with version 1 and I'll hit enter. Now it's going to ask me for description about this project. It depends on the project you're working on, but you can skip the description if you want, or you write a description. This is a project about doing fund or doing this, for students to do this, or teachers to do this, or users, whatever the project is about. You write the description there. The next thing is the entry point. The entry point is called, for me, we'll call it the first file that should be created, or the first JavaScript file that should be created. And I'm going to explain to you why this is very, very important. But it's asking you which one should be your first JavaScript file. Do you want to call it index.js, which is this one is suggesting here now, index.js. Now, some people call their own app.js. Some call it server.js. It doesn't matter what you want to call it. Whatever you want to call it, you just write it here, .js, whatever you want to call it. But if you are okay with calling it index.js, that is fine. You hit index.js. So the project name will be in bracket. The project name here, anything you see in bracket here is the default. It's asking you, are you okay with this? These are like default. But if you are not okay with this default, you write your own. Your own will not be in brackets. Your own will not be in brackets. Anything you see in bracket here is default. But if you are writing your own, you just write the name, hit enter. It doesn't have to be. It will not be in brackets. Now, test command. Test command. When you write a project, when you build a software, in most companies, you are required to write tests, as in how to test the project, which is where this QA, quality testing and assurance people come in. You're supposed to write test codes. Now, if you have, you write your test command. If you don't have, you just hit enter and skip to the next one. Now, Git repository, if you've created a GitHub repository for this thing, you just copy the URL and you put it here. But if you have not, you hit enter and skip it. The next one is keywords. If there are any keywords you want users to use to find this project on GitHub, you write it here. If there is none, you skip it. You hit enter and skip it. The author is like the person who started this project. Most cases, you just write the name of the company and put admin attached to it. For example, Access Bank admin. But here I'm putting my name as the author and hit enter. The licensing, ISC, this is the default. We just keep it at default. Enter. Now it's asking you, these are the informations we've generated. The name of the project is B-Intro. The version is 1.0. Description is empty. The main file is index.js. Your script, your test script, there is no test script specified. The author's name is David Sampson and the license is ISC. It's asking you, is this okay? Now, if this is okay, you hit enter. If it's not okay, you start from the beginning, but it doesn't really matter whether you hit enter or not. The moment you hit enter, it's going to create this file, and the name of this file is called package.json. And I will repeat, the package.json file is the most important file in your backend project. So if I open the backend.json file, it has all the information. So whether you hit enter here or not, you can come back here and change it if you want. Like that, you can always come back here and make any changes if you want. Now, this package.json file, if for any reason you delete it, that is the end of that backend project. You have to start that project from the beginning again. That is why the package.json file is the most important file in your backend project. If you delete it, you have to start building that project from the beginning. Now, except you know all the information that will be here. But in most cases, you're going to have so many informations here. You're going to have version numbers. You're going to have a lot of information here that you cannot cram. So many information. The package.json file keeps track of every information, every single detail about the backend project. The packages you are using, the version numbers you are using, the scripts you are using, a lot of information. If you delete it, you are going to start that project from the beginning. So that is how you initialize npm. Now, all of these things I did, there's a short way of doing it. Now, I have to walk you through the long process so that you just understand how to do it. I'll delete it. Of course, I don't have a good project right now, so I can actually delete this. Now it's gone, but don't follow me and be deleting package.json file. So what I will do is this. I will do npm init again, but I will not hit enter here, because if I hit enter, it's going to walk through those processes again and again. Instead, I would add --yes. --yes means I am saying yes to all the questions you will ask. Keep all of them as default. If there is anything I want to change, I will change it later. That is what this --yes flag means. You can actually shorten it and say -y. Both of them are doing the same thing. So --yes or -y. Yes, you can use CMD, Stephen, any terminal. Now the VS Code has integrated terminal. You can use this terminal too. You can. I just wanted to keep this here and keep this here. I like going with two separate files. That's why I'm using two of them. So that's why --yes, we both do the same thing. So if I hit enter, it has gone ahead and asked the whole question and say yes, and went ahead, created a package.json file. Now I have a package.json file. Any question? If you want to clear this, you hold Control L. Control L will clear it on the terminal. Control L will clear it from the terminal. Control and L, the letter L. So any question on how to initialize npm and create a package.json file in your backend project? Like I said, we only do it once, meaning after now, we may not do it again. We may not do it again. So it's better you understand how to do it, because for every project you start, you must do it, and you know why you are doing it, and you know what will happen if you don't do it, and you know what will happen if you do it and you delete it, you know. Run the man on my VS Code. I'm trying to understand what you mean, Idris. Where are you? Can you use the mic? Or yes, you can do it with power. But if you are using Windows, why not install Git so that you have GitHub? I talked about Git. Why not install Git so that you have Git Bash? Git Bash is very good. I like it. I like using it with Windows. So if you are using Windows, just install Git. It comes with Git Bash automatically. Okay, Steven, like I said before, I'm trying to take it very slowly. You know, we have two classes today. The reason why we have two classes is because we are a little behind, but repeating and repeating will take us a further behind, but I'll try and repeat again. Nathan, we do it once. The moment we do it once, our job is done with package manager. Now the package manager will be keeping track of what we are doing. Anything we install, anything we add, anything, it will take record of the versions of the packages we are using. We are not the ones to tell it the versions we are using. It will pick up that automatically. It will keep picking it up automatically, and we go on like that. Now, if there is any version that is clashing, it will tell us this is wrong, that is wrong. We are not doing it ourselves. Package.json will do that automatically. For Steven, the last thing I did, I will try it again, and that was to delete this package.json file and try creating or initializing npm again, but adding a flag, npm init, and I say dash dash yes. This means that I'm saying yes to all the default questions. Keep everything default. If there is anything I want to change, I will change it after the package.json manager has been, package.json file has been created. Either you go with dash dash yes or dash y. The two of them are doing the same thing. So if I hit enter, it will go ahead and do the default and keep everything default, and it has created a package.json file. Now I have this information. Now this is like the basic information. As you keep building your backend, the information on this place will be bigger and very large, and we continue from there. Stanley, don't worry about the network. I want to believe network is a bit stable on my side. So we're going to have a good recording. Let me be sure that I'm recording. Yeah, we're going to have good recording. So we've been able to initialize npm. Now let's start our backend project. And like I said, the first thing we do is here. It says the main file is index.js. Now, you know that when you were creating it, you recommended to use this. Now, you can change it here if you want. But the key thing there is this. If you want to create your first JavaScript file, it must match the name of the file inside this main file. Otherwise, your backend project will not run. So whatever file you create as your main JavaScript file, it needs to match the name here. Very, very, very important. Otherwise, this backend project will not run. So I need to change it back. If you're changing it back to index, that is fine. It means that this file needs to be renamed to index. Like that. Very, very important. This main file must be the name of your first JavaScript file. So that being said, I can just come here and say console log for me, welcome to backend. So now I'm trying to write JavaScript, the basic JavaScript. Console log for me, welcome to backend. And now I told you that this JavaScript will not run on its own. There is no place that we will go to now and we are seeing console log. We're not going to see this console anywhere because we are writing it on the backend. It will not run. What we will do is to say, come here to the terminal and say node run index.js. So we are using node now to run the JavaScript file, which is what we mean by Node.js. Node.js means using node to run JavaScript file. That is where Node.js became or was called JavaScript runtime. So I'm saying node run index.js. If I hit enter, it now console log for me here. Welcome to backend. So ladies and gentlemen, do you have any question with Node.js setup? Any question on how to set up Node.js? Ask your questions. Now I can still go ahead to do a little stuff. For example, write a function and say the function is add numbers. Add numbers is going to accept a number that has 8 as the initial and p, and the value is 9. And what it is going to do for me is to say const answer is equal to a plus p, and then console log answer, and then down here I will call add numbers and I'll pass in 100 and 500. like this and save it. If I come here, you will not see it running on its own. But if I call node run index.js, hit enter, I have welcome to David and I have 600 console log here. Is the JSON working with the VS Code? Stanley, I want to understand what you mean by is the JSON working with VS Code. I haven't said anything about JSON. No. The console is not the same thing as the node. No. This console log here is JavaScript we are writing. This terminal here, we use it to run any file. But what we are running is a JavaScript file and we want to use Node to run it. That is why we are typing Node. Now I can actually put it very well, like node run index.js and hit enter. Now it's not running here, but it will run here. I think so. I want to believe so. Cannot find. It actually runs on Windows. If you add the run keyword, it runs. Most times it runs, but most times I don't add it. So we are using Node to run index.js. That's what we're doing now. But most times, I think you don't need to add the run keyword because it automatically knows what you are doing. But before, we can add the run keyword and it will run it. But now you don't need to add the run keyword. You just say node and then call the name of the JavaScript file. Automatically, it will run it because it knows what you want to do. Yes. Let's call it like that. The console, this terminal is more like what we were doing with the browser this time. But because it's the back end, you're not going to see this on the browser. Now, the back end is something like this. Assume sometimes I know some of us have experienced this. You will just hear somebody calling your name, but you don't know who's calling you and you don't know the direction where it's calling you from. That is exactly the same thing with the front end and the back end. The back end can be calling the front end, talking to the front end, but the front end doesn't know where it's coming from and doesn't know who is talking to it, like that. So the back end is totally independent and is hidden and cannot be seen. You don't know what is going there, but it can actually communicate to the front end, and the front end will hear and respond, but doesn't know who is calling it. So if it doesn't know, it will not know whether the backend was built with Python. It will not know whether the backend was built with Node.js. It will not know whether it was built with Java. That the front end will never know. All it needs to know is respond to me, call me. If I call you, respond to me. That's all the front end is interested in. There is absolutely no way to view your work with the browser, but you can view it with Postman. And that is why I said download Postman. Now, the Postman is more like a website that has been built to test all the endpoints you are going to be building on your backend to see which endpoint is working very well and which is not working very well. So because if you are building a backend, you cannot build a backend and build a front end and then build a front end to start testing the backend. No, you can't. This API, this Postman is more like a pre-built or already built front end that can call all our APIs. Now, if our APIs are responding to this Postman, then it means that it will respond to any front end application, any website or mobile app, it will respond. But the most important thing is you build your backend, you use this API Postman to test it, whether your backend is actually responding, sending and receiving data like that. If you close the terminal, it doesn't get back where you stopped. But all you need to do is go back to that same folder. It must be opened on the same folder that has this your project. Why is it not moving? Okay. Sorry. So I need to just go back to that same folder where I have my backend and open the terminal again. And the terminal is just running the project. It's not doing anything. So it cannot tell where you stopped before. No, it can't. You open it again on the same folder and you still do the same. Node run. The name of the file is index.js. And it will run it. This is the console log. This is the second console log. So that is all. Do we have any other question before we continue? Do we have any other question before we continue? Any more question? Ask your question. Now we have a lot to go through, but good to know we may not. So any question? If you can actually hear me, please drop a thumbs up so that I know you can hear me very well, like very well. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, like I said, when you want to build your back end, how we add the index.js to Node. You don't add index.js to Node. The index.js is the name that appears here as your main file. Now, it doesn't have to be called index.js. You can call it anything, app.js, server.js, ayodeji.js, whatever you want to call it. But make sure that whatever you write here will be the name of the file you create. Otherwise, the backend project will not run. Now, this is the default name. If you don't like this default, you can change it to whatever you want. I can change it to server, for example, server.js and save it. And then come here, rename this to server and save it. And then come here and say node run server.js and hit enter, and it will still run. It doesn't really matter what you call the file. Now, if you open VS Code, there's I think for Windows you have some stuff here, but if you can't find the terminal, this icon here is the terminal. If you click on this icon, it will open this terminal here. So this is how to open VS Code terminal like that. But I think that you also see it, if it's Windows, you see some things here. Yeah, you see this thing here. All right, don't worry. We have not done anything. All we did is to create a folder. Open that folder with VS Code, which we have been doing with all our JavaScript classes. You open the folder with VS Code. Then you run npm in it. Now, if you don't understand it, don't worry. We're still going to do it one last time before we do our final stuff. So, like I said, being a backend developer, a lot depends on you. But let's start with the basic things, the simple things that depend on you. The first thing is you are responsible for setting up a server and making sure that that server is running 24/7. Let me confirm that I'm recording. Thank you. Yes, I'm recording. So the first thing you want to do is to set up a server that is running 24/7. Now the server is responsible for handling all the logic, listening to requests that are coming in, and sending back a response. That's the first thing. The second thing you need to do is to build your endpoints integrated with or put together with your APIs. APIs is more like the functions that respond to that endpoint. Your APIs, and then attach it to the server. The server will be responsible for picking which API will run and which API will not run. That's the second thing. The next thing is to create a database. And before you create that database, you'll be able to define the type of data you want to send and receive. The same way you did in your assignment, and I'm sure a lot of you you're through with that assignment, you get to see data. That data that is coming back to you was actually designed by the backend developer. So the backend developer will choose how to design their data on their backend or on their database. The front-end developer really had nothing to do with that. You just receive any data that the backend is sending for you. So as a backend developer, it is your job to figure out what type of data, how do I want to format the data, how should it be presented, how should it look, and send it to the front-end developer. Of course, you've actually made a request and you've seen other people's design. You will still make more requests and see other people's design too. See more people's design. So the first thing is setting up a server. Now, before now, we are going to we would be writing codes to set up a server. And I want to believe you know what the server is right now. Some people say the server is the back end. Maybe you can call the server the back end. You can call the hosting the back end. Whatever you want to call the server is fine. But it is only those who are actually working on the back end know which part of the back end is actually called the server. A server is the part that is actually responsible for listening to requests. It's just like a gate man. There will be a gate man at the gate of the house waiting for visitors. He will listen. This visitor is supposed to be allowed in. The gate man will allow you in. This visitor, you are not going to be allowed in. Wait here. Let me go inside, get the information, and come back to you. This visitor, your details, I'm not happy with the way your details are or how your face looks like. Please go back. That is the work of a server. So the server is the gate man on your back end, running 24/7, handling all the requests, listening to all the requests, and choosing which request will be answered and which request will not be answered. But most times, we hear people say the whole backend is a server. That's also correct. You don't say nothing is wrong on the backend. It's all correct. Some people say the hosting is the server. You can actually, most times you hear me say it because I want to use a language that the layman will understand. We say the server is also correct. So before now, the first thing you want to do as a backend developer is to set up the server, because if the server is not running, how do you listen to requests? Where do you start from? You start from setting up a server. And like I said before, the server, you need to write codes to set up the server manually. But there is absolutely no need to do that right now. There is absolutely no need to do that right now, because technologies are moving forward. If you are still behind, you will be left behind. And no company is interested in how you set up your server or how you don't set it up. They're interested in use the latest technology, use the latest things that are in trend, so that we don't go out of fashion. So we are not going to be setting up the server manually, but we'll also be writing code for the server, so that I'll delete these things. We'll be writing codes for the server in order to set up the server. How do we set up a server? We go to npm I want to believe you know what npm is. Please tell me you do. Yeah, this is npm. There are so many packages that come with Node, and one of them is called Express. And this is the Express we are looking for. I'll click on it. Express. Now, Express is a fast, unopinionated, minimalistic web framework for Node.js. Now, this is big grammar, but simple short is Express handles the server. You want to set up your server, you use Express to set up the server. Now, there are so many ways to set up the server, but the most popular way is using Express. So, whenever you hear setting up a server with Node.js, a lot of things can come to mind, but Express is one of the most popular. I use it, a lot of persons use it, it works fine, and it can still work fine for you. So whenever you hear Express, you think of Node.js server, and by now you understand what is the server and which part is the server. So Express has done well to actually show you the codes you need to set up your server. It is very short. These codes here will set up the server that will be running 24/7. But the beauty of this is not the code that will be running. This is the code that will tell the backend that your server should run on Express. So it is not like this simple code here and the code you write that will set up a server. No, this code here and the code you write to bring in the Express server, and then you will be using the Express server as your own server. I don't know if that makes sense, but it should make sense. It should make sense. So, long story short, let's just go into it. Like I said, you initialize the package.json. That's the most important thing. And then you create your first file, which is the main file. You call it whatever you want to call it. It is inside this file that you will initialize your server. So the first thing first is to bring in Express, a package. These things that are called packages or dependencies. You know what? I think I will explain it. I will explain. There's something I need to explain because so that you don't get confused. The idea of dependencies. The beauty of it is not difficult. Dependencies simply mean all that the project depends on. That is what dependencies is. If the project depends on sort to run, then sort is a dependency. If the project depends on pepper to run, then pepper is a dependency. So right now, the project will depend on Express because we want to use Express. So therefore, Express is now a dependency for our back-end project. We're going to talk about that now. But when you are working with dependencies, there are different types of dependencies. It doesn't matter where your file is. This is arranged in alphabetical order, MONOPQRST. So this is like alphabetical order. If I change the name of this thing to maybe app.js, you see now that it is above the package.json. So it doesn't really matter where the file is. Most important thing is you know what you are doing. It doesn't really matter the position. It's arranged alphabetically, like alphabetical order. It is, I'm trying to understand. Now, you know, for this back end, now that you are just learning it, which is most like your first class, forget about everything that I don't mention. Just focus on the things that I am mentioning and I'm teaching you. Like I said, I'm just going to teach you just what you need to be a back-end developer that can build a complete back-end. Any other thing that I don't teach you, It's not as if it's not important. It simply means you can pick that up on your own like that. But the core things you need to be a backend project developer is what I want to teach you. Now, I don't understand what you mean by is the server JavaScript different from the index JavaScript? No. The index JavaScript, the server JavaScript, that is just the name of the file. You can call it index JavaScript, you can call it server JavaScript, you can call it app JavaScript, whatever you want to call it, provided that that is the name here inside your package.json file. The reason is this: the package.json file should know everything about your project. So it should know which one is your main file. Whatever you want to call your main file is up to you, but just make sure you put that name inside here. That is all. So there's no different JavaScript, they're the same thing. I was talking about dependencies. Let me show you something. So the first thing I want to do is to install a dependency. And one of that dependency is called Express. And they say, how do we install Express? You do npm install Express. Now, because it's backend, you will not go here and download the package and then run it. No, you just start. Network has started. Okay. All right. So how do you install a dependency? You open the terminal. It can be this terminal if you want. Let me clear this. If you want, you can also use. Yeah, I'm going to tell you different types of dependencies, but I want to bring it up first. So you can also use this terminal provided it is opened on the same folder. How do you install dependencies? npm install, and then you write the name of the dependencies. That is how to install dependencies. Now, even if you don't remember, you can always come to package.json npm here, type in the name of the package. It will tell you how to install that package. You don't have to cram anything. Backend is very easy, very, very easy. If you are using your brain, some people have brains, but they don't use it. But if you are using yours, backend is very easy. Backend is more like real life. You are writing codes that will solve real life problems. So if you are actually thinking and doing solutions, backend will be very, very easy. But if you are somebody that don't like thinking, you don't like thoughts, sorry, backend is not for you. So I will use this terminal, for example, the external terminal here. And how do I install? npm install space express, like this. So once you type npm install, and then you put the name of the package you want to install, you can actually do it this way. For short, npm I express. The I there stands for install. So you can either type it in full, npm install express, or you type it short, npm I express. So I'll hit enter. Now to do this, you need internet. It will start downloading, and don't worry, it doesn't use a lot of data. But to be a backend developer, that is why it's expensive to build backend project, because number one, it will cost you data to build backend projects. So that's why most times backend is very, very expensive. So here we have a key called what? Dependencies. So it is going to carry a list of all the dependencies we are using this project. And I said dependency is anything that this project depends on to run. One of them is Express. If you're going to be using sort should be inside this object called dependencies. If you be using Pepper, make sure to add Pepper inside here. You will not be the one adding it, by the way. Package.json file will pick it up automatically. Wisdom for now, you don't know the packages or the dependencies you will use. That is why I am here. We are going to be building a real life project. So you will follow me through the journey of building one. When I'm done building one, I will then tell you to go ahead and start building. Now, if you are in my class, you will know the packages to use. But another way is to search the internet. It's very simple. I just come here and say, I want to set up server, or just write which package do I need to set up server on Node.js. It will give you a list. You pick up any one and then set it up just like that. But for the sake of learning, you are here. I will go through it. We're going to be building one together. When I'm done, you should be able to know the packages I used, how I built it, and then you can take it out from there and start building your own. Steven, I don't know what kind of problem is this showing. Can we see a screenshot? No, Cynthia. No, it can't. For here, now there are cases. There are cases where a dependency downloaded from one project can be used for another project. I'm going to talk about that. In fact, let me just go straight to that right away. So I have installed one dependency, and all I did to install it was type npm I express, and it installed successfully. Now there is another package I want to use. There's another package, and it's called NodeMon. I'll hit NodeMon. Now I'm going to explain what NodeMon does and what we need it for later. But for the sake of explaining dependencies, I want to bring in NodeMon, and this is what NodeMon. I'll click on NodeMon and open it, and it says how to install NodeMon. Where is it? Okay. npm-g NodeMon, this. So let me just, but I'm not going to use -g. I will go with -d, and I will tell you why. npm install -d NodeMon, and I will explain. When you are building dependencies, let me install this one. There are different types of dependencies. One of them is dependencies. These dependencies are the ones that appear here. The normal dependencies, they appear here. These are the dependencies that this project needs to run. If you deploy it to the server, those dependencies must be present. Wherever you take it to, these dependencies here must be present. You are showing me the terminal. I thought you would show me your package.json file in full so that I know where the error is coming from. So that I would know where, but I don't think problem loading reference. I don't think this unable to load schema. Did you actually create this package.json file the way it's supposed to be created? But I don't think you should be having errors this early. Now you're going to be having a lot of errors, but not this early. We are we're at the early stage. So any error you're having now is disallowed. You're not allowed to have any errors right now. There are so many errors to come, so many of them. So now I have these dependencies. Like I said, these are the normal dependencies that this project needs to run on. Then there's something called the devDependencies. The devDependencies are dependencies it needs only while in development. While I am still developing it, that is the only time I need these dependencies. The moment I deploy it, these dependencies are no longer needed on production. So the moment I deploy to production, these dependencies under the devDependencies are not needed, because devDependencies are development dependencies, dependencies that I need while I am developing it. Nathan, you can have so many dependencies. It can be up to 50, it can be up to 100, depending on how large and how big your project is. So if your project is small, you use a few dependencies. If it is too large, there are so many dependencies to use. But don't be scared. There are all the dependencies are available and new ones are coming out. And by the way, what is dependencies? You too, you can actually build your own dependencies and deploy it out, and people will be using it. Dependency is just a group or a block of code that will wrap as a function and do something. So instead of writing that function again, like reinventing the wheel, somebody has written these functions, put all of them together, and then deployed it as a dependency. So instead of me rewriting those functions, I can just call that dependency into my project, which is like a function that user, that developer has built. So you can also build your own dependencies and put it out there, and people will call it and use it. So don't be scared about dependency. There will be so many dependencies. Dependencies are just block of codes, functions that we do a particular thing. So somebody has written it and then deployed it out there. If you want to use it, you go there, you call it and use it in your project. It can be a function that does anything. So you write it and you use it. For example, Paystack have their own dependency. Flutterwave have their own dependency. A lot of people have their own dependencies. If you are working on your own project, you can also build your own dependencies, and other persons will use your dependencies, depending on what you want that project to do for you. So, like I said, normal dependencies are the normal dependencies it needs to run both during development and also on production. Now, but dev dependencies are dependencies it needs while developing. Now, but there are dependencies that you install with this flag -G. -G means a global dependency. A global dependency is a dependency you install in your computer. You are not installing it only for this project. You install it in your computer. Any project you build with that computer or that laptop will have access to that dependency. That kind of dependency is called a global dependency. So that kind of dependency, you don't install it twice because you are installing it on your computer, on your machine. So like Cynthia was asking, so these are dependencies that can be used for different projects, global dependency. So you can install a dependency and it will be used for so many projects, not just one project, a global dependency. An example of that is this NodeMon. But I chose to install NodeMon as a dev dependency to show you the difference between dev dependency and other dependency. But you can install NodeMon as a global dependency if you want. All right. So I want to believe you know the difference between dependencies, dev dependencies, and global dependencies. Dev, global. Now, if there's any package you want to use and you don't know how to install it, it's very easy. Go to npm node package manager, type the name of that dependency or package here and search for it. It will show you how to install it. All right. Is there any question so far? Ask your question before we continue. Now, sorry, I forgot to mention, while you are installing these dependencies, two files will be created. One of them is this package lock. It is called package lock. Now, you have no business coming in here. You don't want to come in here. You're not doing anything here on this package lock file. So I will encourage you not to come and delete anything, not to come and do anything. It is just What this package log does is taking record of where that dependency is coming from, the registry is coming from, and just information about that dependencies. And the second thing is that a folder is created and it's called node modules. Node modules. Now, node modules contain all the files that dependency needs. It contains all the files that dependency needs. And again, you have no business coming here into this node modules file. You have no business here. But if these node modules files are not here, the dependencies will not run, because these dependencies need the files that are inside these node modules to run. No, Cynthia, when you install a dev dependency, you are installing that dependency specifically for that project. If you are going, but you are installing it specifically for that project, but just the development stage, not for production. So a dev dependency, you install it specifically for that project. If you start a new project, you have to install dev dependency for that project again, but just for the development phase. So that is what dev dependencies are. It is only a global dependency, and global dependency does not appear here. They won't appear here. For example, Node. You installed Node. This project will not run without Node, will it? This backend project, will it run without Node? Can somebody just yes or no? Will this project run without Node? And if you want to install Node, you can actually search here. Node. Okay. I'm looking for Node. Yeah, and this is Node. And this is Node. So Node is a global dependency. And you don't have to install it for every project. You install it only once, but you are installing it on your computer. So that is what a global dependency is. You are installing it on your computer, not specifically for any project. And global dependencies will not appear here in this package.json file. Any one that appears in this package.json file is specifically for this project. If you are building another project, you will install it again. Nathaniel, there is no limit to the number of dependencies you can use per project. If your project is very big and they keep making changes and adding features, there is no limit. And like I said, a dependency is simply a function wrapped together, packaged as a module, and deployed. It will run independently. So you can decide not to use that package and write the whole function yourself, just that it will take you time and it will be very plenty to write. But if you don't want to waste that time, somebody has already written that block of code, put it as a module, and deployed it to run independently. It is just for you to bring it in and use it. If you use it, the person gets recognition. That is all. You're not paying the person. Although there are some dependencies you have to pay, but a lot of them you're not paying them. They're just getting recognition that their dependency is being used by a lot of projects like that. So dependency is just a block of codes. It doesn't have a limit. Now, there's no limit to functions you can use for any project. You can use as many functions as you want. All right, that is said. We've been able to install Express, and I said the only reason why we are bringing in Express here is because we want to set up our server and we want the server to run on Express. That is the only reason. So Express here is mainly for our server. And like I said, I've explained what the server is so many times. So when I mention server, you should know that I'm not talking about the whole back end. That is a part of the back end that we call the server. So that is the only reason why we are bringing in Express here. So how do we set up Express? We have installed Express. The first thing to do is to install Express. Let me show you. You don't have to cram anything. They are here. Search. Okay, so I have my Express here. Now, the first thing is you have to install Express first, and then you bring in Express. So how do you do that? I'll create a variable, const Express. Now, you mustn't call it Express. You can call it anything as your variable. This is the variable I am creating here now. I'm creating a variable. But I'm saying that this variable requires Express. So what I'm simply doing is I created a variable here. And I'm saying bring in Express that I installed and put it inside this variable. That is all I did. So I created a variable and I brought in Express that I installed. How do you know that this is the one I installed? If I type in ES as in Express, it's supposed to show me. Yeah, the moment you see it appearing here with these curly braces, you know that yes, you've installed Express. But if you haven't installed Express, this thing will not appear here. You will not see it. So at any time you are not seeing the name of that dependency, it means you have not installed that dependency. So I've installed Express. I am bringing in Express and I'm putting it inside this variable. Now you can call this variable anything, but we like to call it Express because so that we know that what is inside it is Express. So that is what I put in here. That is the first step. The second step is to create another variable that you call your app. You can either call it app, you can either call it server, you can call it anything you want, but we like calling it app because we see the whole backend as a backend application. So app is short for application. That is why a lot of persons name it app, but you must not name it app. You call it app, and you say this your application is running on the Express function. Like I said, a dependency is just a function that they've written the function, bundled it together as a module, and deployed it. If you want to use that function, you will install the dependency and you use it. So what we are doing is we bring in Express, put it inside this variable, and then say our backend application is running on the Express function. Shikina. So by doing this, we are using the Express function as our server. That's the first. Now the second step is the server has been set up to run on Express function. Now we need to tell the server to be listening to requests at a particular port. It is only the requests that are made to that port that should be responded to. Any other request that is not made to that exact port number should be disregarded. So we call the app, which is our application. This application here now that is running on Express server, we say application.listen. We want our application to listen on port 8000. Now you can put any number you want here. 8081, you can put that. You can put 5000 if you want. You can pick any port number you want. So these 3 lines, with these 3 lines, I have succeeded in setting up a professional server. Why do I call it a professional server? It's a professional server because a lot of backends today are running on Express. And Express is just a function that sets up the server. And like I said, you don't have to use Express if you don't want to. You can go ahead and write the function yourself without using the Express function. Write your own functions, put it together, even if it's 300 lines of code, 200 lines of code, 100 lines of code, 50 lines of code. No matter the number of lines of code, you can write it yourself and it will still work. But what is the need for reinventing the wheel when it has already been done, tested, and proven to work fine? All right. So now our server is running and is running on Express function. How do we know that our server is running? We'll come back here again and I am going to say node run app. I want to believe why you know the reason why I'm typing app.js. I want to believe you know that. So run app.js and I'll hit enter. If it hangs like this, then it means that our server is running. Because like I said, the server is not supposed to stop running. What kind of server? This is the Express server. I don't know what you mean by what kind of server, because I know I've explained what the server is. So if you say what kind of server, are you talking about because we are setting it up to run on the Express function? So the server there is actually the Express server, because like I said, that is the only thing Express is doing here for us, to handle the server, so that we don't have to write the whole code to set up our server. That is the only thing Express is doing here. So if it hangs like this, then it means that the server is running perfectly. Like I said, the server is not supposed to stop running. It should keep running 247. But I will cancel it with Control C rather. Cancel it. So now I've canceled the server. The server is now running. But there's another way to know that if the server is actually running. What I can do is to add a function here. And I want to believe you know what an arrow function is. I'll add an arrow function here after the port number. What will this arrow function do? If the server starts running, I don't want it to just hang. I want it to write a message for me in the console log. So just write a console log message and tell me that the server has started. I don't want us to see message. I'm in my exact. So that is and I want to are you my is I need break, but I mean is it yeah, sorry, is this now? Is this Is the network still breaking? Really? It's still breaking? All right. All right. So maybe we'll just do this last part. Now, like I said, the server is the first thing. Now the first thing actually is to initialize npm. So initialize npm. The next thing will be to set up the server. Now, like I said, the server is responsible for listening to all the requests that is coming to your back end. And the server is responsible for picking which API will respond to any request. The server is responsible for knowing which endpoint is being called. The server is also responsible for knowing when to send or bounce back a request. The server keeps the back end running 24/7. And because we don't want to spend time writing so many lines of codes, we can actually bring in a function that has already been written to handle the server. And that function is called Express. You can call it a function, you can call it a dependency, a package, whatever you want. But you know that it's basically a function. And we are calling that function here after we brought it in here. So with this, you know that the server will start running. But it will be hanging. We don't want it to just hang. We want to know if actually it is running. So we'll add an arrow function. Now you can add any function you want. It doesn't have to be an arrow function. You can add any function you want. Anonymous function, anyone. But I like using arrow functions. So you can add an arrow function. What the function will do is the function is just going to console log a message that will say server has started running. That's the message I want to see. So I don't want it to just hang, because I know if it's hanging, it means that the server is running. But I don't want it to just hang. I want to see a message in the console log that will say server has started running. It is very, very important you add a message so that you know when it is running, because you will deploy it and you know if it's actually deployed. So I will start again by saying node run app.js. Now it said server has started running. So with that, I know that my server has started running. The next thing I want to start doing is adding the APIs at the endpoints one by one to handle different functionalities. That's the next step. So any question on how to set up a server? Joshua, this server we are building here is the server that will run our backend. Actually, let me rephrase. It is the server that will run the logic and the APIs on our backend. It does not host website. This server, we are actually going to deploy it to a cloud storage. So we're not hosting any website on this server. This particular thing we're building, these codes we are writing, we're going to be deploying it to a cloud storage, any of the cloud storage. So either you want to use AWS, Heroku, DigitalOcean, Render, any of them. I'll also show you how to deploy, but it is not this one that hosts website for us. This one is responsible for running our backend, running all our APIs 24/7. That is what this function is doing. And you know that it is running because it is still not. Now, one thing you should know is that if you don't close this server and you shut down your system, the server will still be running. So if you don't cancel it with Control C, I use Control C to cancel. If you don't cancel it with Control C, the server will still be running. Next time that you open your system and you want to run on port 5000, it will tell you that something is already running on that port. So whenever you set up your server and you run your server, be sure to close or end the server before you shut down your system. Because if you don't, that particular port will keep running until you cancel it. So that is one thing about setting up a server. And you can actually find functions. Let me see. Codes to set up Node.js server manually. Now, if you don't want to use Express, without Express. And yep, we can go. Let's go there. Now, I don't want to write it from my head. I just want to show you that you can actually do it without Express if you want to. Okay, Stack Overflow, how to allow calls, no. Build a Node.js without using Express. All right. All right, here is the code you can use. Actually, you don't need this part. This if statement, you don't need it. All you need is bringing the HTTP, which is actually hypertext transfer protocol. Like I said, you make HTTP request, bring in the HTTP, then tell the HTTP to create a server for you. That is HTTP.create a server that will have request and response, and then create a port number and tell the server to listen at the port number. That's all. So this works fine. It's not actually plenty lines of codes. It's not plenty. It's not plenty. You just create a server and then tell the server to listen, and that is all. It's just a short function, but the Express is a little bit better and modified better than this. That is why we prefer using the Express function rather than writing it manually. But if you want to go manually, you are allowed to. All right. So any question on setting up this server? Is just 3 lines or 5 lines or 6 lines? Is it up to 5 or 6? All right. Any question on setting up the server? Ayodeji. Now, when we are writing JavaScript now, I mean, as of now, you don't need semicolons to end JavaScript lines. No, it was before that we need semicolons, but right now we don't need semicolons to end JavaScript lines. It knows where every function ends. It knows where every function ends. Wisdom, I like to see a screenshot. What is it saying? If you do it the way I'm doing mine, you're not supposed to encounter error. Like I said, you're not supposed to encounter error now. Errors will come, but not now. You're not allowed to have any errors now. So, I think we're going to take our break now, or should I do one more thing before we take the break? Should we take the break now, or one more thing before we take the break? Now, let's do one more. Okay, anything you say. Let's take the break now. Cynthia wants to run away. Cost rep wants to run away. And cost rep has actually been silent. I haven't been seeing their messages. Cost rep, people say I don't respond to questions. Why do I have cost reps that will not be responding to questions? You want me to respond to all their questions? All right, let's vote. If you say we'll take the break now, how do we do it? Okay, let's go this way. If you say we continue, if you want us to continue, drop a thumbs up. If we are taking the break now, drop a thumbs down. Yes, I know you'll do better. If you want us to take the break, thumbs down. If you want us to continue, thumbs up. You want us to continue? Really? I want you to understand this backend very well, so I don't want to rush it. Take the break, thumbs up. We actually have more thumbs up than thumbs down. We have more thumbs up. Cynthia is trying to bribe us, but it's allowed. We have more thumbs up than thumbs down. Okay, let's take the break then. I'll see you again at 7 p.m. Hopefully, our network will be very good by that time. But feel free to just look at how to set up this Express function. It's very simple. Now, when I come back, we're going to handle this part. This part is not needed. You just need these 3 lines to set up the function. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you again. Bye. We have started back end though. Please, anything I do from now henceforth, make sure you know it and you can do it. That is the whole idea of starting from front end and getting to here. 7 p.m. Rewind, we're coming back by 7 p.m. This is 5:13. So see you at 7 p.m. Bye.